All right. And welcome to the BME Life podcast, the first one of 2023. Excited to kick it off. Today we have a super awesome presentation and a very special guest. And I would like to introduce Mary and ask her to take it away.
Thanks. Yeah, everyone, thank you so much for joining. We're very happy to kick off 2023 with a live podcast and with a very special guest. This is Sania, founder of Medical Wonders. And I'm very happy to have her here because she's not only a very bright person and student, she is actually, well, of course, she's a biomedical engineering student, but she is right now pursuing the pre med track, which is something that a lot of people have questions about. And I'm sure she's going to be able to give us a lot of great information about it. So, really looking forward to it. So, thank you, Sonia, for joining. And I guess just to start off, could you give us a little bit of background and introduction on yourself?
My name is Sonia and I'm a sophomore biomedical engineering major in NJIT, known as New Jersey Institute of Technology in Newark, New Jersey. I started my engineering journey obviously as an undergrad, and we'll probably go more into why I decided to choose engineering, but in high school I was definitely kind of passionate about engineering because my dad was an engineer and I was able to do a couple of summer programs throughout my high school years to just figure out if I wanted to do engineering or not. And then I thought it was super cool that BME was such a new field that was kind of off of like other engineering disciplines and kind of combined everything together. So that's why I decided to choose being a BME, and I've learned a lot since then.
Nice, that's awesome. And you kind of touched a little bit on why you chose engineering and why it interests you, and specifically biomedical engineering. But I guess now, could you give us like a little bit of more background on why did you choose to study BME, but also kind of take that BM pre-med track as well?
Yeah, so I decided BME, as I mentioned before, because I really like the intersection between medicine and engineering. BME is overall a general new engineering field compared to most of the other engineering fields. Um, some kind of argue that it was off of like mechanical engineering. So it focuses more on the biological aspect of it. So, the applying the engineering to the actual body. So I thought that was super cool in general, just coming out of college and being able to study a new discipline in engineering that had so many facets to it. As an engineering major, I take electrical engineering classes, I take mechanical engineering classes, I take chemical engineering classes. So I'm not like the BME curriculum, at least in my college, and I'm sure that it is for most of everyone as well. It's not based on one specific class that you take. There's a lot of overlap classes that you take with other engineering majors that are supposed to be taking that class for their major, and it's just there's a lot of versatility with that, and it's really good to kind of know everything about like different fields that I learned. Like, I also have that electrical engineering background because there is an actual course at my college that kind of specifies the electrical engineering aspect of BME. So, like the electrical signals in our body and how we can use that to create solutions. So, and I also wanted to make a lot of an impact in the medical industry in another way. I feel like I definitely knew in high school I wanted to be a pre med and I wanted to go into it, at least trying to be a doctor. But
Mhm.
I didn't really want to do a bio or chemistry major because I really thought that there wasn't too much of an application outside. Like, we do still have to take chemistry and bio classes, and I really think that those topics are important, but I didn't feel like with those majors I was making a big enough impact. So that's why I decided to do BME. And then into pre med, I always knew I wanted to be a pre med student. And the reason why, like I said before, I chose BME is just for towards making that impact. And I knew that it was going to be definitely hard um choosing both of these majors, because pre-med, I do, even though it's not an official major, I do count it as one because we have to take
Mhm.
extra courses. So I really just liked doing BME, and I knew that I wanted to become a doctor. So, in the case that I decided not to, I would still be making an impact in the medical field.
Mhm. No, that's an amazing response, and and I share with you in our previous talks that in my BME class, like I did see several pre-med majors. Like in your class, do you kind of see the same? Or like, what percentage of students do you think are also in the pre-med track?
Yeah, so my school is a bit notorious for after junior year being extremely hard and making kind of the pre-med BME pre-meds drop, but I would say like in my freshman and sophomore year currently, I saw about 50% of the BME majors pre-med. And then the other 50%, they were like coming into college, they knew that they didn't want to do pre-med, so they were doing some other form of a concentration, so a biomechanics concentration or an instrumentation concentration, which is more on electrical engineering. And after, I know from like, I have a couple of older friends who were BMEs. They actually, after they got into their internships and into their other coursework, they actually dropped being pre med. So I would say after junior and senior year, it would probably only be like 25% BME pre meds because once again, it's really notoriously hard, especially at my college. And I know that all of the other colleges as well. They usually tend to tell you if you're 100% set on pre med, don't do BME. But that wasn't really the case for me because I'm still not completely sold on pre-med. But I am having inclination towards it, so it's good to have that backup major.
Of course. No, yeah, I mean, it sounds like you have a great plan. And it's interesting because it really does sound like you kind of chose two very challenging things and you're putting them together. So I can only imagine like how difficult it is and how much hard work you really have to put into it. So it's really impressive. But we all kind of know that, or at least I learned during my college years, that doing good in your classes can only take you so far. There's a lot of things that you have to do outside of just your schoolwork. So I guess could you and I'm saying this because I know you've done a lot of things already. So could you tell us a little bit about the experiences that you've had so far? And I mean, you're only a sophomore, right? So what kind of experiences have you had so far? And yeah, just tell us about it and what you liked and maybe what you haven't.
Yeah, so I pretty much owe this to my school because my college is really small and there's not really much of a female population in my college. So I was able to get all these really cool opportunities and leadership positions from the start because since a lot of people do not go to my college, it's the perks of kind of choosing a smaller college. There's not much competition for these leadership positions, which is something that I definitely wanted because I knew that if I went to a New Jersey school like Rutgers, I would not be standing out. I would probably be the same person and I wouldn't be able to get personalized advice because at those major schools, they usually refer to you as an application number and they don't really know who you are as a person. So it's really hard to get the best out of your undergrad major, especially if you want to be pre med. But some of the things because of this that I'm involved in, I'm currently the vice president of our Society of Women Engineers chapter. So this is more of my engineering related thing. I basically work with a lot of companies and a lot of clubs around my college to do a lot of networking nights with companies, help women get jobs, especially because like I said before, our population is only 75% male, 25% female because it is a huge it's a pretty big tech school. So that's why I got involved, and then I'm also the current president of a community service organization. If you're watching and you went to high school, it's kind of the college version of Key Club. It's called Circle K. And for my pre-health involvement, I'm the external events coordinator for the Pre-Health Society. So we try to have a lot of events with medical schools that are nearby, which we have a couple, and to kind of plan some opportunities with other clubs as well that can help pre-medders get more interested and into BME. So those are kind of my main ones. And obviously, as Mary mentioned before, I am the founder of Medical Wonders, which is a 501c nonprofit, and we basically focus our work on educating and advising the youth on the astounding medical procedures, diseases, diagnosis, and more. And I actually am continuing this from high school. I started this in junior year during the pandemic, which we'll probably go more into later. But overall, it's grown a lot. We have 300 people involved with us, so that's also one of my major commitments. But I have a couple of smaller ones as well, but I would say that those 3 to 4 take up most of my time. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just about to say it sounds like you have a lot of free time then. Just kidding. No, that's really impressive, and yeah, I know that all of that is really really awesome that you can do that. I'm going to be behind the scenes still, but I am going to hop off just so I can kind of let you guys two share the screen only here. But I might pop on, you later on. But for now, I will. Peace out.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you have very amazing experience, and I'm wondering, now that you've gone through all these things and tried out different things, like, what would you say is like, would you recommend other pre-med majors to kind of follow your steps, or are you just kind of having all these different experiences just as a more like a personal challenge and goal that you have? But yeah, I'm just curious to know, is this something that you think pre-med BME majors should be doing?
Yeah, I think that obviously depends. I obviously wouldn't do it just because, oh, it's going to give you like a competitive edge, or, oh, you're an engineering major, like just doing it for the title. I think if you genuinely have an interest in learning more about the intersection between medicine and engineering, like I said before, especially for high schoolers, if you want to figure out that passion, there's a lot of summer engineering programs you could take for BMEs and all of that. So I would definitely like recommend that. But if you're genuinely interested and you think, okay, maybe I'm not 100% sold on the pre-med track, maybe I want to work on the medical field in another way. So helping, helping with tissue engineering and helping with creating prototypes like in the medical device industry to help patients go back and rehabilitate, then I would definitely recommend it. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say like it's hard. It's not hard. It's extremely hard, extremely difficult. Sometimes I constantly tell myself, oh, maybe I should just switch to a bio major. Like this would be so much easier. But it is worth it. Like every BME person that I know, a couple of people and some of my cousins that went to med school after being a BME, and they've told me that they don't regret it, because it was nice to have that backup. It was nice to have that competitive edge for med schools, because if they do see that you're, sometimes anything but a bio or a chem major, they'll definitely like that. And
Mhm.
also, if you can succeed in being an engineering major, so you can get a decent GPA, like that's always important. And I also have the backup as well, like in the industry. If I decide to take a gap year and I don't get into med school, I always have that backup for that year where I can use my expertise and my degree and get a job, or maybe work in the industry, and then figure out more if I want to do med school or not. So honestly, my unbiased opinion, I would recommend it. But
Mhm.
if you clearly do not have a passion for it, or you're just doing it just for, like having saying, oh, I'm going to be an engineering major, it's not worth it.
Mhm. No, I totally agree. And it's funny because I remember being in college, I think one of my last years. And I wasn't a pre-med, never crossed my mind, like medical school is not something uh I just thought it was like, whoa, like, but it was very interesting to see just like all the pre-med students. And one time we had like a military surgeon. I think I already shared this story with you, but just, to share with the audience, we had like a military surgeon come into our class and kind of you just encourage us to pursue medical school if that's something that we wanted to do, because medical schools really do look, or not look up to, BME majors, but like you do have an advantage over other types of majors. And specifically, he was just saying how, like biology student, and not to put other majors down, like it's, you're eventually going to go to medical school and learn what you have to learn. But if your plan is medical school, your bachelor's degree is definitely like the foundation of your career. And like, in biology, maybe it's more like science and understanding concepts and terminology and things like that. It's a lot of memorization, really. But when you walk into engineering, it turns into more of a like solving problems. And that's something that, I mean, yes, surgeons and doctors follow their knowledge and standards and things like that, but there's always things that happen that, like, oh, what do I do now? And that like solving problem solving skill really comes in handy in moments like that. So
Yeah.
I've definitely heard that medical schools really value the engineering portion of it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's definitely interesting.
Yes. So we you kind of mentioned a little bit about the advantage that you would have as a pre-med in BME rather than other more like traditional majors. But I guess could you talk like a little bit more about the advantages, but also like the disadvantages that there could be if you do decide to do BME instead of like other traditional like biology, biochemistry, all that?
Yeah, so I think at the BME this took a lot of like self-awareness after my first semester, but you have to, unless you're a gifted genius and you're like Albert Einstein, and engineering and all of the BME and pre-med stuff comes easy to you managing, which most of the time it's not. The disadvantage I would say is that your GPA might get lowered a bit. That's something that you just have to give up as an engineer. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into med school, like your MCAT score, your extracurriculars, what you involve yourself in. So it's not solely based on GPA. You obviously have to have like a decent GPA to get into. Obviously, I haven't started the process of applying, but most engineers that do apply for med school, they say that my GPA is significantly less lowered, like what will happen to me, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you just have to be okay with that. And I feel like some medical schools know that, a biomedical engineering or any engineering major, not even a BME, compared to a bio or a chem major, they're not, their GPA is going to be, their coursework's a lot more harder than bio and chemistry majors. And, bio and chem majors also have it really hard with some coursework. But overall, the general consensus is that engineering major coursework is like one of the hardest at any college you go to. So you just have to kind of not compare yourself, because that's what I was doing a lot. I had a lot of bio and chemistry friends, and they were getting 4.0s the first semester, and I was just sitting there thinking, why am I not getting one? Like, what's
Mhm.
going on with me? And then I realized, like, it's a lot of consideration. I was actively involved in a lot of extracurriculars, so that took out less time for studying. And also, I was bouncing a lot more credits and honors classes that they weren't, because I was an engineering major. And then that's why, going into my next point, it's also very easy to get discouraged. A lot of people kind of, transfer out of the BME degree, not just because of pre-med, but I've heard a lot of some of my old friends have had friends that have transferred out because it's too hard and anything like that. And that is completely understandable. Like, it is hard. But I think that that's just some of the stuff that you kind of have to give up and be more self-aware about. But I would say, like, with the whole Mary, like how Mary was saying about the whole problem solving, that significantly helps with your MCAT score, because the MCAT is designed for you to problem solve. And a lot of bio and chemistry majors, they have to kind of, figure out, their own way of how to problem solve this. Because sometimes they do give you like case studies and stuff on the admissions test, and it's not easy. And like almost every single biomedical engineer I've talked to, they've said, the MCAT is a little bit easier for us. I mean, it
Mhm.
obviously depends on if you do well in your pre-med classes, but in terms of the problem solving, it's easier for them to grasp the type of question it is and what
Mhm.
they're asking, because they have that engineering background. And also, more into the advantages, as a BME, I've already had to take a lot of the pre-med coursework that's required. So I have to take 1 year of physics, which is what's required for med school, 1 year of general chemistry, which is required for med school. I have to take 1 semester of organic chemistry, but I just had to take another extra semester just for the pre-med requirement. And I have to take a lab with it as well for my engineering requirements. And I've taken a human and physiology class that's related more towards my BME major, which also counts towards med school. So there's a lot of overlap between a lot of these science majors. Like even if you do chemical engineering or biomedical engineering, there's a lot of overlap, and that gives you a really good advantage because, you're showing that your coursework also applies in the engineering aspect, which is what med schools really like.
Yeah. No, of course, that I think that's a great perspective, to of course there's a lot of advantages, but you also have to be aware of the disadvantages, and if you're really willing to do that, or if it works with, your personality and what you want to accomplish in during your undergrad. But no, those were good points. And I guess, the next point that we had here was, could we talk a little bit more about how you think a student, like what would you tell someone on like how to succeed as a BME pre-med student? And I kind of shared a little bit, specifically in our channel and BME, I always mention like, oh, like you gotta network, like you gotta have research, or not research, like, well, yes, research, but also just like more like internship experiences. Like if you really want to break into the medical device industry, you need an internship. So what's kind of like the equivalent when it comes to being a pre-med student?
Yeah, so there's all I really like to think about pre-med is just adding on that extra, extra classes, extra clinical hours that you might need, like medical scribing or, working and volunteering at the hospital. It's just something extra. As a BME, I'll share my experience. So, as the vice president of Society of Women Engineers, I was the treasurer and outreach coordinator before. So, we have a bunch of contacts with our college and a lot of companies. So, thankfully, I was able to reach out to the a huge pharmaceutical company named Merck, and we had an alumni that graduated who was also part of the club. So I was able to network with her and a bunch of other people at our national conference in Houston, Texas this time. And I was actually able to land an internship this summer with Merck in the vaccine manufacturing division. So like I said before, like you do not, as a BME, you do not have to sell your soul to pre-med. A lot of medical schools and a lot of people expect you to network. They expect you to get internships because, especially if you're not sold like I am on the pre-med process, it's good to have that internship or that co-op to basically figure out, oh, do I like the industry more? Do I see myself working there through this internship? Or I don't like it, maybe I should stick with pre-med. So it's really important, since you have that extra coursework as an engineering major, to figure out whether or not you want to do, the industry or you want to do pre-medicine. And I feel even if you're 100% sold on pre-med and you're a biomedical engineering major, I think it's really important to explore your options and network because, your mind could change. I mean, I have a family friend who was a BME, and he took his MCAT and he got into Columbia Med School, but he decided last minute he didn't want to go. He liked consulting more and he liked the medical device aspect. So he already got all of his acceptances. He applied to med school and then he was like, "No, I don't want to do this anymore." So there's a lot of people, a lot of BMEs that have that realization as well. So it's easier to have that realization before you start the whole process because it can be crazy with the whole med school stuff. So that's why like I would encourage like anyone to, join like a engineering club or go on company fairs or go to conferences with, that engineering club and see if you can network and, have internships as well. And I also had like a couple of other offers as well, but I decided not to take them just because I wanted to learn more about the pharmaceutical industry, which is what BMEs can also work in. So they're really important for pre-med medicine majors. It actually helps you stand out because especially if you're in a pharma or a medicine related industry, they will definitely ask you, okay, they'll probably say, oh, maybe she realized in this internship she didn't want to do it in the industry, and now she's applying as a pre-med, so. And you once again, I keep stressing, the engineering degree is an amazing backup. Let's say you don't get into med school the first time, you want to keep trying, totally fine. And you maybe want to work in the industry, or maybe you want to do masters and further your education like that. Like, that's totally fine. And a lot of people do that as well. I have a couple of friends that are also doing a master's right now, and they're a BME, and like, they have the experience, but they're not sure if they can apply outright out of college, which is what a lot of BMEs do as well. So I would say, like, all of those things, definitely, like, continue your path. Like, just don't completely sell your soul to pre-medicine, because like, a lot of, you're more than being a pre-medical student. You're also an engineer, or you're also a biologist or a chemist, and you also have the right to maybe take a summer off and say, hey, I want to be in a medical related field, but I want to explore the other side of medicine.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I thought that was amazing advice. And I really like that you focused on, and I think I am guilty of this sometimes too, where I'm like, you have to get an internship because that's what people look for, that's what your employer is gonna want to see. That's what good looks on your resume. But you touched on the different side of, or, it's related, but it's like another side of it, which is like, they're important because that's how you find out, is that really what I want to do? So thank you so much for saying that, because I truly believe in that, and I love that you focused on that. So that was awesome. Um, and I guess for the next point, you kind of talked about how some of your classes as a BME overlapped with some of the classes that you needed to take for pre-med as well. Are there like any other, like, when you're comparing BME to pre-med, like, what are those like, if I'm someone who's a BME and I'm like, yeah, maybe I should do pre-med just in case I do decide to go to medical school, what, if any, like, additional courses are there, or like, how is the curriculum compared? Because I know, for example, in my university, we had like 3 tracks, and I think you kind of shared that with me as well. Like, you had some different tracks, like biomechanics, biomaterials, instrumentation. So how does it work for a BME pre-med student?
Yeah, so I think yeah, I touched on it and you're right. So there's usually 3 to 4 different concentration. It definitely depends on your college, but I know the general is usually biomaterials, which is more chemical engineering based, and tissue engineering based. You have bioinstrumentation, which is electrical engineering based, so that's more of the medical device industry. And then you have the biomechanics, which is pretty more, obviously, more mechanical engineering based. So I at least in my college, I still have to take, like I said, physics, general chemistry, organic chemistry. I have to take the labs. I have to take anatomy and physiology, because as a BME, you have to know the body pretty well in order to actually be able to put stuff inside of a body. And also, I have to take a couple of extra courses as a pre-med, such as biochemistry and a biology class that's not a BME class. But the good thing about my college is most of the time you usually can get it substituted in. So instead of taking, the biology course of BME, you can take the biology general course that you would take for medical school, and it can get substituted. So they're pretty flexible with that. And like I mentioned before, I have to take thermodynamics and other things like that. And it's really important to note that with these med school applications, a lot of these engineering courses, take um, they take some of these medical engineering courses and count it towards your science GPA, which is really important in med school. And the science GPA usually has your biology, chemistry, physics, and math. So, for example, if you're taking extra math courses like statistics and stuff, and you want it to count towards your science GPA and you get a good grade on it, it'll significantly increase your science GPA and your cumulative. So there's a lot of goodness with that, because obviously bio majors, they have biology courses, so they can add those to their science GPA. But we have engineering courses that are science based, yes, but they're engineering, but most of the time they usually can be added. And then in the case that, the medical school doesn't agree with that classification, they usually can just let you know and you won't count it. But I know, like, especially checking a lot of, social media threads and stuff, a lot of engineers have counted a lot of their engineering courses that were science related towards, their science GPA for med school. And it's helped them with their GPA as well, especially if you do good in those classes. So I would say, like, there's maybe a couple of extra classes you have to take, but nothing major, because the med schools understand that, you might have a anatomy and physiology course that you're required to take, which was in my case for a BME degree, versus taking the regular anatomy and physiology, and they'll still count that. So that's also, like, really important for some to note.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I guess touching more into maybe someone who is a BME, but maybe they're not sure that they want to go to medical school. Would you still suggest that they do pre-med, or what would kind of be like your advice to them?
Yeah, so I think it just depends on the experience that you have. I feel like regardless of if you're undecided or not, most engineers and kind of science STEM majors get involved in research. They get involved in non-clinical hours, which is the stuff that I mentioned, like leadership, being a part of a club, volunteering. Those are things that med schools are going to look at anyways. And also, like, they're going to look at your internship regardless. They're going to look at your coursework. With med schools, you can be any major and apply. It doesn't have to be a bio major or a chemistry major, an engineering major. So even if you want to be a business major, you can apply, and they'll still look at that. But I think if they're not sure, I would definitely just do a little bit more of experience with clinical hours. So, like, a lot of medical shadowing, scribing, reaching out. Also, volunteering on nonprofit medical organizations. Talking to maybe doctors, or maybe even like your own doctor, pediatrician, and saying, "Oh, why'd you get into medical? Why'd you want medicine? Why did you apply to medical school?" So I wouldn't say, like, "Oh, if you're unsure, just completely go away from it." I
Mhm.
would recommend, like, even in college, I had a hard time of doing this, but just keeping your options open. Because, one day you might say, "Oh, I don't want to be a doctor anymore," but then, like, a year from now, you'll have these specific experiences that maybe, let's say, "Oh, I wanted to volunteer at a hospital, see what it's like." And then a couple of months in, you're like, "Wait, I can actually see myself doing this." So, like, I would recommend, just doing it, treating yourself as if you're a BME student and also a pre-med student. Because you definitely also do not want to get your hopes up. Let's say, like, for some reason you don't get into med school, and like, you're disappointed because you're like, "Oh, all of my opportunities are med school related. I don't really have much work experience with BME," and it's like the same opposite as well. So I think, like, I always treat it as like I'm a BME student, I'm applying for the industry, but I'm also, I have the option to also go to med school. So it's good to diversify it. And
Mhm.
like I said before, medical schools, they love, the diversification. They love you being a well-rounded student, and also jobs as well. Like, jobs love seeing you in leadership positions. They love seeing you volunteer, giving back to the community, especially with a lot of companies, a couple of big pharma companies. They love giving back to the community. They have specific paid times off where they go with their team and they go and volunteer. So it's really important, if you're also applying to a job, to make sure that the company's values also align with yours, and like what you've done in college. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And we're kind of running towards the end of the podcast now. Like, well, not that we're running late, but I'm just saying we're reaching the end of the podcast. Um, and it's time to talk about medical wonders, because that's how we originally communicated with each other. And I mean, it's just a very impressive page. Like, when you first look at it, it's like, wow, there's so much information, and not only information, but it's just like done in amazing quality. So yeah, tell us about Medical Wonders, what it is, why, how it started, and all that.
yeah, okay. So Medical Wonders is a 501c nonprofit organization. We focus a lot on advising and educating the youth on the medical field. So anything related to the medical field. So the PA profession, the dentistry profession, medical school, PA school, nursing school, NCLEX, anything that's related to medical field, and even biomedical engineering. We focus a lot on that, especially since, I'm a BME. So I definitely want to give also a little bit of information on that. So I started this in about March 2020 when the COVID pandemic hit, because a lot of my opportunities in high school as a junior, they got canceled. And I was devastated. I was like, I have to do something. I have college apps coming up. I want to get more involved and learn and figure out what I want to do before I apply to college. So I created this online organization. Originally it started off as just being just giving out information about the COVID-19 pandemic, other diseases, and other things like that were prevalent at the time. But then slowly more people started getting involved because, as other high school students and other, college students, they were also out of opportunities. They had to go to virtual shadowing, they had to do a lot of virtual things. And, it was better to have, a leadership position, working from home, online, just having a specific deadline to have everything due. So then we slowly introduced it, and now we have 300 people around working for us. So whether that's being a general member and just, listening to our opportunities and hours and everything like that. And then also, whether it's being actively involved with our main team. So, having our social media posts out for Instagram, posting on our LinkedIn, posting on YouTube, making different shadowing programs. So we have a lot going on. We always have opportunities rolling. So I'm sure Mary and them will probably link, our Instagram and everything like that later on. But we currently have a lot of executive board applications out. So to join the team with us, and then also ongoing applications of being a member, or even tutoring through us. So we also produce a lot of tutoring materials for people to help with the MCAT, NCLEX, the DAT. And those some of those topics include organic chemistry, biology, physics. So whatever you usually have to take for a pre-med requirement and have to know for the admissions test, we cover that as well. So you can definitely stay in contact with us through Instagram, through our website. We usually have a section in the bottom where you can send us an email directly towards us. And I'm sure Mary and them will probably link all of our outlets and everything like that. But yeah, we're decentralized, we're online. So if you're looking for a leadership position online that that's flexible and you'll be able to work with and only have to commit a couple of hours a week, then that's usually what we're here for. So it was just we first started off as a resource, but now we're still continuing to be a resource with interviewing medical professionals and doing partnerships like this. So we're just here as a resource for everyone. If someone is lacking and they want to learn more about the medical field and learn how to talk to people, that's also an option for them.
Yeah, no, and it's a great opportunity, honestly. Especially, well, I was gonna ask you, are these executive board opportunities for college students, or are you also allowing high school students, or what kind of people are you looking for?
Yeah, so we usually let at least sophomores in high school apply to us, and above. So we've had a bunch of college students on our e-board. We've had graduate students on our e-board. We've had high school students on our e-board. Our organization is mainly focused towards the pre-med side of it, but we're open to anyone and everyone, especially if you have minimal or no clinical experience or any experience in the medical field. This is a resource for everyone to get started and to get into it. So there's no requirements. It's really just dependent on the role, if you can commit those certain amount of hours, which most of the time people can, because it's not really much of a commitment. So but other than that, it's open to anyone and everyone. So
Awesome. Well, any student out there is looking for an opportunity, definitely check out Medical Wonders, or just for resources, like you mentioned. There's definitely a lot of resources there, tutoring, so a lot of amazing tools in there. But yeah, I think we reached the end of our interview here. I think we just need to maybe close up with any leftover general advice that you could think of? Just wanted to share any last words.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, but I would probably say the end is just like the pre-med toxicity, like I it's just in general whether any major you are, it's so toxic sometimes, especially if
Mhm.
you go to these like really competitive tech schools where everyone is like wanting to brag about everything. Like you don't listen to it. Like I've literally had so many encounters with bio majors telling me that, oh, why are you doing an engineering major, like why are you doing that to yourself, like and bragging about their better GPAs or what they're doing. And it's like you do not need to listen to any of that. Like everyone is its own journey. Medical school accept any and all majors as long as you can complete their requirements and have a good application. So like it's also very toxic. Like do not even listen to it. Like if someone tells you like that you aren't good enough, especially those pre-med advisors, because I'm dealing with that personally sometimes. You don't even listen to them. Like pre-med advisors are notorious for telling you that you won't get in if your GPA is like maybe low or significant, but you just take it with a grain of salt, and then you just like keep going and you ask other people that have gotten into med school, or you ask Reddit. Sometimes I turn to Reddit and I'm like asking, and people have a lot of advice online as well.
Mhm.
So I just turn to them and I ask them like, okay, what can I do now? Sometimes like you don't want to get your like mindset completely ruined by these people and other pre-medicine advisors. And with that, I'll also say like it's really important to work in silence. Like I'm an avid believer of this. It doesn't even matter non-pre-med stuff. Um, unless they're your closest friends and you know that they won't like backstab you or tell the world about what you're doing. Really important to keep it to yourself. Like some stuff, obviously, like I'm here as like kind of like an educator, like advice person, but there's some stuff that you shouldn't be mentioning to people, because some people take it as jealousy and they'll undermine you in some way, or they'll try to put you down by saying, oh, you don't need to do that, like why are you applying to that? So it's just
Mhm.
easy to work in silence and trust your process, and also have a good support system, because most of my friends are non-pre-med majors, because at least from my school, they're all very like toxic, and like they only care about one thing, is undermining people and making sure that they have a better chance of getting into med school. So it's really important to keep like a good support system from your friends and family, and like also be like really real with yourself. Like there's gonna be a lot of tough times where you're gonna think, oh my god, I don't want to do this, like like I just want to quit, but it's gonna be like worth it at the end, especially as a BME pre-med. So
Yeah, definitely. And I'm curious to ask you, because when it comes to that toxicity and stuff, is there like or like people telling you like, oh, you can't do it, like it's you need to have a really high GPA, or it's just not achievable, like you're not good enough. Um, do you think that's always the case? And I know you still have like a couple years to go, but I guess, have you seen that issue ever since you were a freshman? Like, do you still see it? And from other people, do you expect to keep going through that
yeah.
throughout the years?
Yeah, I feel like I've seen it. I mean, I can't speak for everyone's college.
Yeah.
I know that at least in my experiences, I've seen it a lot, and some of my cousins and friends who have gone to med school, they've experienced it, and I don't expect it to kind of go away. I think
Mhm.
that even I'm struggling with this sometimes, to not take it to heart and manage it
Yeah.
personally. I think it's just about managing, what they say to you, and saying and just telling yourself that this is your journey. It's not like going into freshman year, for example, I thought taking a gap year was the worst decision of my life. Like, I was never open to it. I was like, no, I'm going to get into med school the first time. I don't care what anyone says. And like now I'm seeing that most people in med school, they take a couple of gap years to, work on their application, and maybe, take a break from school and then apply. And that's
Mhm.
totally okay. So like I've had to open myself up to that maybe I'll have to take a gap year, or maybe I want to work in the industry first and then apply to med school. So
Mhm.
it's always like keeping an open mind and not letting what people say bother you, because that's always going to happen even with a non-pre-med role. Like, you're going to always have people telling you that you're not enough and you're not going to do anything with your life, but that's kind of the opposite. I mean, obviously if you're putting in work and stuff like that, everything will like happen and it'll fall into place. But in general, like, some of my pre-med friends, we don't even talk about our grades. Like, we don't talk about, we just study together, and then we just say that whatever happens in that test, it happens. Like, we that's the type of like pre-med friends you should be having, not the constant like bugging you, like, oh my god, what'd you get on this test? Oh my god, I just got an 80 on it, and it's like, making you feel like, bad. Would have, so it's like you also have to find those type of pre-med friends where, there's no competition, you guys study together, help each other out, don't talk about grades, less pressure on that. And also have non-pre-med friends so they can also ground you. And like, some of my friends have literally had to come into my room and be like, you're studying way too much, like, get out of your room, like, we're going somewhere. So like, that's also having that balance as well.
Yes, of course. No, okay. That's I was just very curious to hear, your experience, because I remember when I was like a BME student, like I kind of took like the first 2 years just taking like general courses. I didn't enter as a BME right away. So it was my first BME year, but it was technically my third year. And I just remember thinking that it was so hard. And like I would look at all like certain people in my class that would just be very vocal about how good they were, things like that. And they just seem so smart, right? And you're like, wow, like I'm not that smart. Like, am I gonna be able to do this? And with time, I think you just kind of learn to and kind of realize that just because they're vocal about it doesn't mean that they're better. And you kind of realize that everyone's struggling, everyone will have their strengths and weaknesses, and you can make it through too. Like, you just got to put in the hard work. But yes, I agree that having a good group of friends that you can like be like not competitive with is very important, and instead they just support you. That I definitely had that. I was very blessed to have that. So yeah, it was amazing. But yeah, definitely recommend that to people as well, to find a good group of friends if you can. You don't have to, I mean, but it's definitely helpful, like you have people to study with and stuff.
Yeah, like, I would say one last thing, probably like most of my friends are BMEs. We're gonna end up applying to the same internships and jobs, together. But it's taken me a long time to learn what true friends are in college, because sometimes, it gets a little bit crazy with, you know, different alignments and different goals,
Yeah.
and also your background. But like, all of my BME friends have been like extremely excited about my internship. They've always been like, oh my god, you do so much, like, you're so inspiring. Like, you need those type of people to kind of like ground you,
Yes.
tell you that, you're doing a good job, because sometimes like that's extremely hard. I know for me, I'm always like hungry for more, but there's some stuff that, that you're doing good, and you need friends and family to kind of help you with that. So
Yes, for sure. Awesome. Well, I think that was a great last ending note. But yeah, there's nothing left other than to thank you, Sanya, for your time. I really appreciate you just telling us about your experience and advice for, anyone out there who is a BME, maybe considering being a pre-med, or they're already a BME pre-med but feeling lost or, discouraged. But pretty sure you shared a lot of amazing advice. So thank you.
yeah, thank you so much for having me, Mary and
Of
Adrian.
course.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you guys can feel free to reach out to me at Medical Wonders. Even if you have general pre-med or BME advice, I usually respond to a lot of high schoolers and a lot of college students that kind of come and ask. So Medical Wonders isn't just for like, if you want to get involved, like, if you need any advice, you guys can reach out to us, and then probably one of us or me will answer you guys back. So yeah, but thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And, I guess we'll say, oh, one last thing. Like you mentioned, I'll put all your information in the description box once we're done with this live video. But yeah, thank you so much. And